There we go.
Here we are. We're live. In the name of the Prince of Holy Father, Jesus Christ, our God, have mercy on us and save us. My name is, for those new here, my name is Father Joseph Sweden, and I've worked in Orthodox Apologetics since 1998, and I'm the founder of NFTU, True Orthodox and Ecumenical News, since 2004. We've been in the apologetic space on Facebook since 2016 and on YouTube since 2018, and if you appreciate what we do here, like and subscribe. Tonight we have a special guest. We've had him on previously, and that is Subdeacon Nektarios, author of a number of really big books this year and last year, so we're glad to have him on. And today we're going to be talking about a certain video. And maybe you could give a little background as to why this is not only this video is important, but how you understand it as an insider. And I know what I mean by insider, but the audience doesn't. So,
I just want to start off. Stream is not meant, like, the person that did the video, he did a good work. These are issues that have been long.
He's in the chat and he's kind of upset, but we'll get to the importance of the video, definitely.
Yeah, so what he did was a good work. He understands that there's issues, and these issues are going back to, in my experience, since 2015. So I moved into the DC area in 2015, and a lot of the videos that you'll see in that video that we were looking at is I was actually there for all of these things. Pretty much every video that was posted in this thing, I was somewhere in the background for the most part, especially in the early videos. So I was hearing this stuff live. I was like listening to it and like mind boggled about it. So when I see comments like, "Oh, it's out of context," no, it's not, unfortunately. And the stream is not to like degrade his moral character or he's. So my background is I moved here in 2015. I started going to the cathedral.
You live in Washington, correct?
Yeah, I live in the area. I was very close to Metropolitan, very, very close. Very close. He baptized my wife Orthodox. He ordained me a subdeacon. He blessed my first house. He flew out to San Diego where I got married, and he married us. Like, when I talk about close, I've helped him up and down the stairs. When he had a medical emergency a number of years ago, I was one who drove him to the hospital. When his toilet broke and his shower broke, and when he lived in Shirlington, here in Alexandria, he called me. We used to go to lunch weekly at his favorite Chinese place where they serve duck, and we used to have duck together. And so I know him very well. And
so, like, I mean, would I be going too far if I said you would have considered him a friend, and what happened with that? I know I asked you about this earlier, but for the audience.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Like, I great love for him still, and it's not about him being a bad person. He's a very great person. He's a lovely person. He does his best as a pastor and a rector. I have no doubts about that. That he does care about the flock of the people. It's that the parish that he lives, that he runs. But that's not what we're calling into question. We're not calling into question his morality, or his how nice he is, or whether he's a good person, or whether he's a conservative, in the Republican sense that we understand in America. In all those senses, he's great. But as we know, the canons and the church is very clear, moral failings and public preaching of heresy is two different things. And so when I see people are like, "Oh, it's out of context," it's not. And this is something I've been, and it wasn't always as blatant. In the early years, like, I think he came into ROCOR 2013, 14, I want to say, right?
Yeah, I think so. It was like right after.
And I got here in 2015, so he was still new to the ROCOR. And wasn't the things weren't. I mean, except for the Margaret Barker stuff, that was pretty obvious. But you actually have to read Margaret Barker's stuff to like really know like how.
Well, for the audience, we're getting ahead of it. This is going to be kind of a light review of this because this is an hour-long video, so we're just going to touch on a number of different parts. This is a very long video, and I will put up the YouTube author who put it together said they're not a true Orthodox. We don't endorse them or recommend leaving the official church. He made the video about Metropolitan Jonah that we're going to be discussing, just to clarify. And with that, I guess we can kind of get started with the video. I'm going to skip the intro, and we're going to get right to the beginning here. And some stuff here is going to be shocking, but we're going to get to it. So let's start there.
There's a whole different approach.
First off, can you hear it?
There were some great.
Can everyone hear it? Can you hear it, Subdeacon?
Yeah, I can hear it.
Okay, I think then everyone else should be able to hear it.
Saints, undoubtedly, Francis is a saint, and there's nothing wrong with acknowledging that. Just because we didn't receive notification of his canonization doesn't mean that he's not a saint.
Saint Ignatius Brianchaninov, in his well-known work, The Arena, says, "When Francis was caught up to heaven, says a writer of his life, God the Father, on seeing him, was for a moment in doubt as to whom to give the preference, to his son by nature or to his son by grace, Francis. What can be more frightful or madder than this blasphemy? What can be sadder than this delusion?" Father Seraphim Rose says, "In the West after the schism, the concept of sanctity now becomes different from the Orthodox concept of sanctity. And the best example of this is in the life of Francis of Assisi. If we look at his life, we see that it is so strange from the Orthodox point of view, and we can say that it's not at all an Orthodox life of a saint. And in fact, the key to his sanctity is pride. Tragically, this is not the only example of his beatitude contradicting the words of Blessed Father Seraphim Rose. And Francis of Assisi is not the only post-schism Roman Catholic figure who Metropolitan Jonah believes to be a saint, contrary to the witness of Orthodox saints."
I've got my story of going to Canterbury Cathedral and going into this chapel of Anselm of Canterbury, St. Anselm, who's buried there, who was one of the abbots. And unlike most of the cathedral, which was pretty flat, pretty empty, it was a place that was full of grace. I thought, okay, St. Anselm, there's lots of grace here. I'll venerate your tomb, but you mess up theology really bad.
Just to be clear, and I'm not sure what that extra sound is, but so he venerates St. Francis and St. Anselm. I am going to skip the part about the relationship with Father Seraphim Rose. Basically, it just comes down to Father Seraphim corresponded with him a couple of times, told him not to go to St. Vladimir's, and he went anyway. So we're going to get to there's a lot here. So, I mean, if you want to cover anything specific, I'd rather just go right to Margaret Barker. He denies toll houses. He considers a lot of these things theologumena. Evolution.
I'm not sure if the original, in that video, he covered the original reply of Jordanville that was published originally, because that was taken down because it named names. I have the original.
On the topic of the toll houses revolution, or
no. So when the whole Margaret Barker thing, when I was present for that. So
let's get right to Margaret Barker.
Yeah.
He is using her as a theological text, apparently in a class here. She is a Methodist woman preacher in England. So we're going to get right back to that.
Metropolitan Jonah says that his favorite Old Testament scholar is Margaret Barker, whom he cited frequently in a dogmatics class he gave at the Russian Orthodox Cathedral in Washington, D.C.
So next week we start Barker.
Next week we'll start, and we'll just read through the text. Margaret Barker.
Okay.
Margaret Barker disputes that. According to Margaret Barker, Though what's interesting is if you start applying Margaret Barker to this. Now, you want to apply Margaret Barker to this. This is very interesting.
Is there a book by Barker that we should read?
Yes, it's called Introduction to Temple Theology, or Temple Theology and Introduction. Some of her other books are a little dense. Some of them are so dense that also, if you get a book of the Dead Sea Scrolls, there's a big thick volume of the Dead Sea Scrolls, which is really important for reading Margaret Barker. You should also get the Book of Enoch.
Is that in the Bible?
It's in the Ethiopian Bible.
Oh.
If you want to read beyond that, there's plenty of stuff on the internet. Just Google Margaret Barker. There's several. There are a couple of pages, web pages with her essays. There's one with about 30 essays.
Margaret Barker is not Orthodox. She is a British Methodist scholar who developed an approach to biblical studies known as temple theology. As we will see from the following clips, she teaches that the understanding of God developed and changed during the Old Testament period. She also denies the traditional authorship of the books of the Old Testament.
There's also two essential aspects of creation. There's the noetic, or spiritual, the heavens, and the material. The noetic creation is the angelic world. Now, that doesn't really, there's very little mentioned about the angelic world in the scriptures. If you listen to Margaret Barker, that's because it was all edited out, and you find it in all the parallel literature. Also, we'll discuss a little bit later on some of Margaret Barker's scholarship regarding the development of the concept of the Godhead, which is also something very important. For example, for tonight, there's a really excellent article by Margaret Barker on the history of the text of the Old Testament, which is pretty amazing. There's a fascinating article by a scholar, Margaret Barker, who's my favorite Old Testament studies author. I wanted to share a little bit of this from Margaret Barker. Part of the history of the text, at least according to her and to the scholars that she's working with, citing, in other words, contemporary scholarship, point out that there was a radical difference following the reforms of Josiah, of King Josiah in around 600 BC.
You're on mute.
I was saying I kind of want to stop here for a second because I'm trying to understand that you were here for a lot of this stuff, and my question is, what exactly was this? Was he teaching in a formal capacity to the local parish? I mean, like, are these videos he just did for himself, or?
No. So the link that I posted in the chat there, that's both the long version, the short version. So Jordanville, in response to this, because so many people, clergymen and other laymen, had a problem with what this. He was teaching this to catechumens and inquirers that all this Margaret Barker stuff, temple theology, King Josiah got it wrong, and etc. So in the original, if you go to the archive, what was originally produced by Jordanville Seminary is by Father John Bodecker, who is the Old Testament professor at Jordanville. So basically what Father John Bodecker did is he read, I think, all of her books. And then he wrote this long polemic against it. And this is where it gets interesting. So it says, and I'll read it. For those of you who want to open it, you can go ahead and open it. It says, "Who is Margaret Barker? Why should the Orthodox be concerned with her work? Margaret Barker is a biblical scholar and lay Methodist preacher from England who is best known for a project known as quote-unquote temple theology. Over the past decade or so, her approach to Scripture has attracted the attention of a number of Orthodox hierarchs and intellectuals in her teachings and have been featured on more popular Orthodox platforms. Examples include, but are not limited to, the following. In 1997, she was invited as a contributor to a symposium on religion, science, and the environment by Patriarch Bartholomew of Constantinople, who later wrote a laudatory foreword to her 2009 book entitled Creation, A Biblical Vision for the Environment. In 2004, 2 essays by Margaret Barker entitled Where Shall Wisdom Be Found and Paradise Lost were posted to the official website of the Department of External Church Relations of the Moscow Patriarchate. In 2012, Margaret Barker delivered a 29th annual Father Alexander Schmemann Memorial Lecture on the topic of our great high priest, the church as the new temple, which later made available as an audio recording to Ancient Faith Radio. Lastly, in 2015, Metropolitan Jonah Paffhausen, while producing a series of lectures on dogmatic theology for the pastoral school of the Diocese of Chicago and Mid-America of the Russian Orthodox Church outside of Russia, recommended her writings both to the students in the pastoral school and the parishioners of the Cathedral of St. John the Baptist in Washington, D.C., who were present during the live recordings of the lecture. If one regularly views his video lectures, one will find that it is not uncommon for Metropolitan Jonah to recommend Margaret Barker as a theological and biblical scholar. This uncritical reception and platforming of her work has led to the deception of those who are unable to see the problems with her teachings and has scandalized members of the faithful who cannot understand how their clergy or hierarchs should accept her ideas. The faithful who cannot understand how their clergy or hierarchs could accept her ideas. That was produced by Jordanville and Father John Bodecker. So you can see that it was endorsed by the Ecumenical Patriarchate, not a good sign. Also produced by the Moscow Patriarchate, not a good sign. Also used by AFR, not a good sign. So that was originally produced by them.
I'm going to get to all the comments in around the half-hour mark, but just to add to that, apparently Jason wrote, these talks weren't just given to catechumens, but were used in the ROCOR Pastoral School of the Diocese of Chicago and Mid-America, as he acknowledged in several places in this series.
Yeah, well, I was there. I was sitting right there. So yeah, they were used for, that was the dogmatics class. So he was recording, he was teaching everybody who was there, but the videos were intended for the dogmatics course at the pastoral school under Archbishop Peter.
Priests, lay people, I mean, they're all being educated by some Methodist modern lady. I knew that ROCOR, after the union, the ROCOR-MP began to kind of decline. That's a given, but I didn't expect it to be this fast or like this. This is horrible.
Yeah, so when you're not, so even me, I've read Margaret Barker stuff, and it's intellectually it's very interesting, but the way when he presents it like it's an Orthodox thing just coming from this lady. But when you actually read what's in it, that's where the problem is.
It's not Orthodox.
It's not Orthodox, no.
Wow. All right. Well, let's continue. Let's mute our mics. I'll go to the next section because I think we've covered Margaret Barker. There's a lot in this video, so.
Technically, there's a separation. If they want to come to communion here, well, technically, unless they commit themselves to the Eastern Orthodox Church, through and in confession, then we can't give them communion.
We are not aware of a single saint who has said that the anti-Chalcedonians, or as they are more commonly called by the saints, monophysites, have apostolic succession. We are not aware of where his beatitude is getting this idea that condemned heretics somehow still have apostolic succession. The teaching of the Church has always been clear that heretics, and all of those cut off from the communion of the Church, lose apostolic succession. The canonist Bishop Nicodem Milas explains, thus, the power of a bishop to ordain others, to communicate to them the grace of the priesthood, depends on succession, i.e., on the extent to which he, the subject bishop, has inherited this power from persons who can lawfully transfer it to him, and insofar as he knows how to keep this inherited power and, in turn, pass it on to others. Once a bishop loses this power, whether as a result of a schism or heresy, then, of course, he is not in a position to transfer it to others, so that in this bishop the succession has ceased, i.e., he lost the inheritance, of which he became a partner through consecration, along with other Orthodox bishops. This canonical idea about the sacred hierarchy in the Church, touched upon by Basil the Great in this canon, is nothing more than a succinctly formulated teaching of the Holy Scripture, Holy Fathers, and teachers on the Church. Saint Paisios the Athonite is quite clear that the Monophysites are heretics, as is recorded in his biography written by his close disciple. He did not consider the Monophysites children of God and our brothers, according to the seem to believe that Monophysites are.
I'm stopping there because obviously there's a lot of questions and back and forth about Elder Paisios. My view is he may have been negative towards the Monophysites, but at the same time, he recognized and lauded the Ecumenical Patriarch, who recognized the Monophysites anyway. So to me, it strikes me as pretend protest. Well, let's continue on with the part. We're going to apostolic succession now, and then from there, I think we're gonna take a quick. We're gonna skip past the Monophysites because we all know about it. But I'm gonna get right to the Immaculate Conception, and from there we're gonna get to comments.
His beatitude also claimed that Roman Catholics have apostolic succession as well, which is unfortunately not the only time he has expressed non-Orthodox views on the subject of the Roman Catholics.
I was wondering if we could use the Immaculate Conception as kind of like a test for how that emerged, diverged, and then became. Is it even? It's heresy to us, but
Well, we don't really regard it as heresy because it's not a criterion of division. We view it as strange. We view it as unnecessary.
illegitimate, maybe.
Well, it's a kind of we would probably say it's illegitimate. I mean, it's not illegitimate within the Roman structure.
Could you at least just say it's illegitimate?
It's an odd local. We would see it essentially as a very odd local, culturally relative doctrine that they've elevated onto a higher level. But I don't think we view it. We wouldn't view it on the same level as the Filioque, for example. Yeah, it's a nice pious idea. Essentially, is it something that it's not on the level of of the dogma in which the whole theological structure of the church hangs. Probably, people think, infallibility of the papacy is the big problem. It's not the big problem. The papacy can seen as a spokesman. If it can be seen as the spokesman of the church or the spokesman of the synod to enunciate the consensus of the church, you can say, okay, that's the idea behind it. And so, so when the Orthodox contrast, we have the infallibility of the church expressed through ecumenical councils, and they have it through the papacy. Okay, you're going to have the spokesman say it, or you're going to have two spokesmen say it, or three, because you need all the different languages, right? So that's not the issue.
St. Justin Popovich has a much different view towards papal infallibility than Metropolitan Jonah, and we remind the viewer of what Metropolitan Jonah himself has said about St. Justin.
St. Justin Popovich, who was the greatest Serbian theologian of the 20th century, continually focuses on using the term the God-man. And I think that's really valuable, of the anthropos in Greek, because it emphasizes that Jesus is not just a simple man who was inhabited by or possessed by or had God dwelling in him or had a special relationship to God or something like that, but rather he is God incarnate.
St. Justin Popovich says, according to the true Church of Christ, that has existed since the advent of Christ the Theanthropos into this world as his theanthropic body, the dogma of the infallibility of the Pope is not only a heresy, but the ultimate heresy. No other heresy has so radically and so comprehensively risen against Christ the Theanthropos and his church as papism has through the dogma of the infallibility of the Pope, a man. This is undoubtedly the heresy above all heresies. It is the horror above all horrors. It is an unseen rebellion against Christ the God-man. It is, alas, the most dreadful banishment of the Lord Christ from the earth. It is the repeated betrayal of Christ, the repeated crucifixion of the Lord Christ, not on a wooden cross this time, but on the golden cross of papist humanism. All this is hell thrice over for the wretched earthly being called man.
And
It's that quote from St. Justin Popovich is what I had put in the very first quote I use in the latest book on Catholicism, where that very quote. So you muted.
I know. I'm trying to figure out which of these formats works best to show the book. But yeah, this is awful. We're going to go through just the rest of his views on Catholicism, and then it'll be the half-hour mark, and I'm going to get through all of these comments. A lot of them are very interesting.
And of course, the core dogmatic theology of the Latin Church. The method is different, but the core dogmatic theology, with the exception of the Filioque, is pretty much identical because it comes out of the same. It's based on the 7 ecumenical councils.
The Roman Catholic Church may, in theory, profess faithfulness to the first 7 ecumenical councils, but they do not actually confess it in practice. St. Theodosius of the Kiev Cave said in the 11th century, just after the schism, "They of evil faith, after holding to the Orthodox faith for so many years, have turned away to an evil faith and to Satan's teaching. They have renounced the preaching of the apostles and the edification of the holy fathers, and have accepted a faith based on error and a perverted dogma leading to perdition. Therefore, they have been torn away from us and set apart." And St. Ignatius Brianchaninov in the 19th century said, "Papism appropriates to the Pope the attributes of Christ, and thereby rejects Christ. The Pope is an idol of the Papists. He is their deity. Because of this terrible error, the grace of God departed from the Papists. They are devoted to themselves and to Satan, to the inventor and father of all heresies, including Papism. In this state of darkness, they distorted some dogmas and sacraments and deprived it of its essential significance. No heresy expresses so openly and brazenly excessive pride in its own harsh contempt for people and hatred for them." Does this sound like he believes them to have essentially the same core dogmatic theology as the Orthodox Church?
So, for example, the 8th Ecumenical Council, which was in 869, didn't create any new dogmatic issues. And so, for example, on a canonical basis, we don't really have much material that condemns the Roman Catholics, the Latins. There's very little. There's some decrees of local councils, but
That's just not true. I mean, I'm kind of amazed by this. It's what he's basically saying is that really there is no real problem with Roman Catholicism. Now, this is something I would have expected, of course, from a hierarch of the OCA. They've been saying this for decades. But, you know, how is he in ROCOR-MP saying the same thing and they're okay with it? I mean, and this is we're probably going to have to get to that fact. What exactly will this video accomplish? Because, I mean, I think both of us know it won't accomplish much of anything.
So I'm reading through the comments. You want to go through?
Yeah, let's go through from the beginning. Let's get to these comments now, because I did promise at the 30-minute mark, and it's going to take me at least 5 seconds or so to get to all of them. And let's get started now. Okay, DTC gives the 3 flames up. Gentle Breeze, we read Gentle Breeze's comments. He's clearly not happy we're doing this. I apologize. Unseen Warfare says, for the record, to be canonical, you have to follow the canons and teach the Orthodox faith. All of world Orthodoxy as a whole is a part of the WCC, which means they believe the branch theory. It's heresy. Let me see here. Orthodox Wasna says, you don't have to disavow because your hierarchs who are unrepentant heresy are proving to everyone they've forsaken the Orthodox confession of faith. I think that's what I do feel the worst about that, because Gentle Breeze did take the time to do that. I probably genuinely believe he thought this would make a difference. And
well, he didn't, like I was telling you earlier, he didn't put in much work, because this is stuff I had already done and me
So
and a few
you
others.
kind of had these things together, and he just kind of collated them.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, at the very least, he must have thought something would happen. We're here to tell you, probably nothing's going to happen. These are views that are held by people in the highest levels of the Moscow Patriarchate. Metropolitan Jonah, if you don't remember, was a monk in Russia before he became a bishop of the OCA and then eventually part of the ROCOR. So this is another miserable test case. And I'm sorry, Gentle Breeze. I hope something happens, but we're going to tell you the truth. We've seen this for years, and nothing is going
I'll get
to
into once you get through all the comments, I'll get into the background story of all this.
Right. The author of the video is the same that's yours, did the prop apology of Athenagoras when he prayed with the Hindus. Okay, I don't live in Florence, nor the channel affiliated with
These
OCA.
are all the old ones,
I didn't even get to them at all. I'm not the one who studies canons or intense philosophical reading, so I'm an average adherent who loves her church. Okay, that being said, when calendars were changed, who was following what canon? They weren't following canons at all. They were following the Anglicans. For Father Methodius Chwastek says, I won't be able to join in real time because I'm in church. I would like to insist that Gentle Breeze consider official in place of the spurious use of canonical. I think that's a fair thing. Or I like to use a state church, state-sponsored. As a priest, I couldn't care less to belong to the official churches and neither preserve orthodoxy nor do they recognize each other. No big loss. I should mention Father Methodius has a YouTube channel, so if you have a chance, you should try to like and subscribe there as well. Not forgetting to like and subscribe us first. But I am concerned that he deleted my post inviting anyone to come visit our parish in Michigan. Well, that's kind of sad, but kind of common. OT trying to get the identity of the guy who made the Metropolitan Jonah video is absolutely unhinged. Wait, who? Oh, brother, he thinks you care about his identity.
We already have an idea who it is. So.
Yeah. I will probably miss out on most of this, but good evening to all preemptively. Greetings, Atomic Lead. Many years to you. Orthodox Wasno, read the calendar question by Father Basil Sakas. Yes, I highly recommend that. If you get the chance, let me see if I can make your screen bigger and figure out how to do that. So it's right there, the calendar question by Father Basil Sakas. It is a fantastic text. It's been around for a number of years, and Subdeacon Nektarios has been good enough to reprint it. And this is a great year to do it.
Yeah, it does, and it has an introduction from St. Philaret in there, so I mean that's great.
And for those wondering why it's a great week, why it's a great year to get the calendar question, it is because this year, as you may or not know, is the Apostles' Fast is in one of its shortest years in the Typicon. It's only 13 days, and so believe it or not, the new calendar churches actually are celebrating Saints Peter and Paul today when we start our fast tomorrow, which means they don't have an Apostles' Fast at all. And if you want to know why, get this book. It's worth it. And I hope we promote the daylights out of this for these next 2 weeks so we get to the Feast of Saints Peter and Paul as we strengthen ourselves in the traditions of the church. And give me one moment while I put back this, and let's continue the comments. Who was trying to reveal his identity? That is sad. I don't think anyone was. The narrative that we broached from the church isn't true. We walled off from a heretical hierarchy and a continuation of a proper Orthodox synod that's not controlled by heretics. Canon 15 of the First Second Synod. Canonical does not mean said group follows the canons. Not a single mainstream Orthodox jurisdiction does. They pick and choose and say economia, but that doesn't allow heresy or religious indifference. But they do allow heresy and religious indifference. The official Orthodox, even Metropolitan Jonah here. The official Orthodox jurisdiction members would do well to realize this. Okay, is this group the true Orthodox, the genuine Orthodox, or the super duper right and correct Orthodox? If you're referring to us, I believe this group would be called the Orthodox, and if you're referring to Metropolitan Jonah, I believe that would be called the Ecumenists. Can't tell. A day early? No, this is not a live Q&A. We do have a schedule for the live Q&A for tomorrow at 8:30 for the 2,000 subscribers, kind of live Q&A special. Big news for us that we've made it past 2,000 followers. It's going to get more interesting from here, and I am devoted to going full time to getting as many people knowing about Orthodoxy as possible. I am putting up another link very soon, either later today or tomorrow, for Tuesday when we'll be debating Elijah Yassi on the papacy. Let me see here. When you say super correct, are you referring to something? Father Seraphim called the Boston mentality. I wouldn't conflate all of true Orthodoxy under that distinction. Yeah, I really think that most World Orthodox using the term super correct really don't know what they're doing. Popcorn yellow striped smile. Popcorn yellow striped smile. Popcorn yellow striped smile. Not sure what that means, but I'm happy you're smiling. Although true Orthodox is a term Father Seraphim Rose uses. Yes, it is. Your blessing, God bless you. True Orthodox is a term Father Seraphim used many times. Doobie-doo-doo. And we continue. Archbishop Vererke told those in ROCOR to refer them to themselves as true Orthodox, like the Catacomb Church. Yes, and many remember that. So for you talking about the boss mentality, unseen warfare, and how's that not a synonym for true Orthodox? Because true Orthodox are jurisdictions. The Boston mentality is a mentality. There is a difference. Almost. We were almost on time. My priest is as zealot as they come, was a big HTM supporter, and he didn't follow them when they broke with ROCOR. Is he in the Moscow Patriarchate now? I mean, that's the question. Yes, sound is muddled. The church is not an LLC where the people who disagreed made their own. The true Orthodox simply continue the tradition of the Orthodox Church while disregarding the false innovationist leadership. 100%. That's how the original video is. Nor should he have. HTM and Hockna were wrong and fell into heresy. Most of Hockna is now part of the GOC now, and there's a small part where they're still debating name worship. One day I hope we get into more detail on that, and maybe, hopefully, that fixes itself. He has that new skeet mentality. I assume he's talking about Metropolitan Jonah, and yeah, they've got the icons of Francis of Assisi and Clare of Assisi, and yeah. Sounds as if there are major plumbing problems. Yeah, one of our mics is doing something funky, or maybe you need to plug in the headphones with the mic. I have no idea. Father Subdeacon, you should mute when talking. We're trying to do that now. Margaret Barker is a fake scholar that a lot of academics love to love. I'll tell you, up until this video, I didn't know who Margaret Barker was. I had to look her up on Wikipedia. I'm like, wait, why is he following a liberal Methodist for his Old Testament stuff? Like, there are church fathers who talk about the Old Testament too. Like, why? Like, why? That's what I want to understand. It's very much Vatican II theology. Yeah, it is. Archbishop Gallitzin is extremely fond of Margaret Barker and her theories. He's also fond of Origen and doesn't like the Fifth Ecumenical Council. What is the deal with him and Margaret Barker? She isn't even Orthodox. Yeah, I'm confused too. All right, that's me. He would be. He's also fond of Origen. Yes, he is. Origen's a heretic. Yes, he is. Reader John. Atomic Leads had managed to make it after all. Good evening to everyone. Good evening, Atomic Lead. I'm starting to wonder, is it Atomic Lead or Atomic Lead? I've been saying Atomic Lead for years, but now I'm wondering if it's Atomic Lead. But it's Atomic Lead. That's how we know him for now, at least, unless he changes it. Evening. Why is M. Barker on his favorites? Don't know. Turn the mute button off. Yeah, we know. Okay. He had a blessing to teach from the previous Metropolitan. Subdeacon, when you want to jump in, you can jump in on any of these. I'm trying to go as fast as I can so we can finish up the video. She's very popular with certain hierarchs, as well as Orthodox theologians such as Andrei Orlov and David Bentley Hart. Okay, so in other words, the St. Vladimir's crowd. He's teaching this to new believers. Dude, as a catechism, I wouldn't want to be filling myself up with anything outside of the Eastern Orthodox Church Fathers. Well, that's exactly why this is so incredibly dangerous. I mean, this is a Metropolitan and ROCOR-MP. He's literally spoiling the flock. These talks weren't just given to catechumens. We read this one earlier. They're used in the ROCOR Pastoral School. He's seeding confusion. Impressive list of luminaries. Of course, Metropolitan Jonah shouldn't be speaking for ROCOR. ROCOR's main fault is receiving him and allowing him to teach publicly. Jason, that they've been allowing him to do that for a decade. This is not a shock. This is a shock for people on YouTube. This is not a shock for a lot of people. And I think this contributed, Subdeacon, to your own frustration and departure from ROCOR-MP to the GOC.
Yeah, so he's trying to, Jason's trying to blow off the fact that, he doesn't speak for ROCOR. I was like, well, you know what? I wrote many a letter to the hierarchs. I spoke to many of the bishops about it. Not just me, other clergymen, other laymen. I mean, there was a kind of an exodus out of that place for a while. So is ROCOR, well, first off, Moscow Patriarchate is endorsing it because it obviously was on their Department of External Relations to say he's not speaking for ROCOR. Okay, well, that doesn't matter because Moscow Patriarchate is endorsing it. We've all addressed it. It was such a problem that Jordanville felt the need to have their Old Testament professor put out a statement on it saying it's heresy, don't listen to it, even against what the Moscow Patriarchate was endorsing, which is surprising.
And you read that one earlier, correct? For people who didn't know
that's and it's funny because he was told don't teach this stuff multiple times, and he just did it anyways. So ROCOR is not on their to-do list to really put an end to it. So, as they say, silence is consent, is it not? That's what the fathers say. So
we're going to go here. And, okay, I'm going to continue with the comments. Paisius, the Bart Kister, said Bart, who loved all heresies. Yep. A few of the monks at Holy Cross Monastery in West Virginia talked up Barker to me in my visit a few years ago. This was after about an hour of them singing full-blown Appalachian Protestant hymns. Okay.
Well, that's important. That's an important comment. See,
Yeah.
Nobody else will catch this because nobody lives here and they haven't lived this. Metropolitan Jonah is he's a frequenter of that monastery.
Mm-hmm.
He's always there. Ask anybody that's in the Eastern American diocese when's the last time Metropolitan Jonah has ever been to Jordanville. When's he been to Jordanville? When's he been to Synod?
Wow. That's crazy. Well, Rocco Remnant says, oh, well, crazy. Holy Cross is usually seen as this trad monastery by New Calendar conservatives. Yeah. Wow.
No,
this is a suspiciously huh?
The monastery it's conservative in the
political sense.
The Republican National Committee sense. It's not traditional in the Orthodox traditionalist sense.
Okay. Nikolai Bauman says this is a suspiciously well-researched video for some random channel to put out. Props for the guy or gal who put this together, but it does make me curious who they are. For the record, neither of us is interested in who they are. We're just interested in the data.
Yeah, so the data about this is there was a letter in 2020, excuse me. It contained all this stuff and it was sent to the Synod. It had multiple authors to it. And it was a letter called The Problematic Teachings, and I have it here. I'm reading it.
Oh, you want to share it on the screen?
I'll just read it a little bit. It says, The Problematic Teachings and Theology of Metropolitan Jonah Paffhausen's Observations of Concerned Orthodox Christians, March 2022. And it's addressed to the Synod. It says, Venerable Fathers of the Holy Synod of the Russian Orthodox Church outside of Russia, we have written this document out of concern for the many problematic theological teachings that have over the course of the last few years been taught by Metropolitan Jonah Paffhausen. As you know, Metropolitan Jonah has been very, very active in catechesis through the recording of his catechetical classes, courses, and sermons, which are recorded from his parish and other places on the internet, such as podcasts and interviews. Those of us who have compiled this document concerning the list of problematic, even heretical statements are both ordained and lay members of ROCOR, Antioch, the OCA in Australia, Canada, Britain, and the United States. We have observed on multiple occasions where the Metropolitan has taught things that are minimum problematic in their teachings or in their worst outright heretical statements made bareheaded from the AMBO. One of these things was the teaching of the heretical works of Margaret Barker. This can be seen in his work going back to 2015 as recently as 2020. As well as the subtle hinting of Margaret Barker's theology when discussing the Godhead and referencing modern Judaism, that they have a monadic God, whereas Margaret Barker's theology, ancient Judaism, and the religion of the First Temple had some type of Trinitarian Godhead figure. As you know, the Holy Trinity Seminary in November 2021 released a document entitled The Lady in Her Temple, an Orthodox Appraisal of the Temple Theology of Margaret Barker, a brief summary by Father John Bodecker. And it goes on, we are a group of people, both ordained and lay, as stated earlier, who used to follow Metropolitan Jonah through his online lecture courses, and because of his status being a ROCOR, or Metropolitan ROCOR, we believed, as many others, that he would teach was not outside of Orthodox Christian theology. Until we read the document that was published by Holy Trinity Seminary in 2021, we also have followed his weekly sermons as well as his recorded catechetical lectures that are frequently posted onto the St. Herman of Alaska YouTube page. It is primarily because of these sermons and catechetical lectures that we are writing. We believe, because of his positions as a Metropolitan and ROCOR, that people will be led astray into believing these things that are harmful for the spiritual life and theologically harmful to any Orthodox Christian that is listening to what he is teaching. And then it goes on, and it's just so it's a letter that was written
like an letter to the hierarchy.
Yeah, it was a letter written to the hierarchy, and I saw one of the replies from one of the bishops in Europe, and they were like, and he said, I'm not even going to bother reading it because it wasn't signed. So it doesn't matter what he said. Unless you sign it, we're not going to pay attention to it.
They would just depose whoever signed it or excommunicate them. Wow.
They would, but there are some of these people were Antioch and OCA and other places. So, I mean, that wouldn't fly there, or maybe it would. I don't know.
Yeah, you never know. It depends on how much traction it got, which it didn't get too much, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Okay, let's continue the comments. Let's continue. I have a question. What Orthodoxy are you guys? Eastern Orthodox, ROCOR, or GOC? These aren't flavors of Orthodoxy. There is Orthodoxy and there is not Orthodoxy. The genuine Orthodox are Orthodox. ROCOR is losing the savior of Orthodoxy, and what you call Eastern Orthodox is not Eastern Orthodox, but ecumenists. We are the Eastern Orthodox. Paisius protesting somewhat, not stopping the commemoration of the Patriarch and tolerating all the innovations to the gospel introduced by Demetrius, Iakovus, Parthenius, very true, unseen warfare. But he was merely made a saint. But he was made a saint by the EP, having seen his incorrupt plastic sandals. If Elder Paisius was smart, he would have ceased commemorating heresies. True. If Elder Paisius was smart, we wouldn't have known about him. Yep. He definitely sounds like an Esvats grad, St. Vladimir's grad. St. Theodore the Studite, however, writes, the work of the monk is not to tolerate even the least innovation of the gospel of Christ. Elder Shabbos of Mount Athos. That Elder Shabbos has no books. Jesus saw the crowd and told them there is no sign given but Jonah, a believer murdered, being outnumbered by other people of faith. Christ has redeemed us from the curse of the law, being made a curse for us, for the certain curse is everyone that hangeth on a tree. Galatians 3:13. Romans defeated the Jews at war, so Jesus hung on a tree in our literature. I am not really sure what you're talking about. So Jesus was hung on a tree because that was the prophecy. Subdeacon, can you give advice to those in the new calendar that might be on the fence with becoming true Orthodox but are spiritually attached to false saints and elders? I always fail with friends at this endeavor. That's a great question.
Some people have to have the ears to hear. I mean, what are we looking at here? You got to really think about it. You're wanting, essentially, we're like, put it in an ancient church context. You're asking, I don't want to break away from these heretics because I need Nestorius to canonize my elder. It's change the heresy for an ancient one, and that's, how ridiculous is that?
Well, that's what's interesting is that I saw that on Twitter there was a convert lady on Twitter who had become World Orthodox, but she had a devotion to Rose of Lima and Clare of Assisi, and I was, she announced this the day that she actually was becoming a uniate.
Yeah.
So because you are who you venerate, and if you're venerating Roman Catholics, you'll be one. If you're venerating ecumenists, you'll stay one. But if you want to be Orthodox, you have to stick with venerating Orthodox people. It's
like, I don't know if most of you are probably in my Telegram, but I posted there's an icon of Elder Gervasios Paraskevopoulos. Forgive me my Greek's crap. But this, he was recently canonized, I think, a few years ago by the Ecumenical Patriarchate. He's quoted as saying, for the time being, he's talking about the new calendar innovation. For the time being, we will obey these innovators, remaining on guard for subsequent changes. We will obey these innovators. This person was canonized by the Ecumenical Patriarchate.
And now you know why.
Now, contrast that to St. Paul. Now we command you, brethren, in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ, that you withdraw yourself from every brother that walketh disorderly, not after the tradition which he received from us. So who are we following? There's certain people online. Oh, the contemporary elders. This same person, in a comment to me, said concerning St. Paul in Thessalonians 3:6. He said, well, St. Paul was elder of the day. So, that's what he decided as a contemporary elder of the time. So now...
So you can contradict yourself.
Wow. So you're placing these Athonite elders that were canonized by the Ecumenical Patriarchate, who is a member of the WCC, and do we even need to list all the things that he does on a daily basis?
Yep. Versus
the scriptures. So we're ignoring St. Ignatius, we're ignoring Thessalonians, Galatians, Jude, 2 Peter, it's just on and on. Like how you need to really think of yourself.
It's kind of almost a mini papism. It's terrifying.
Who are you going to follow? The scriptures and the apostles are, elders that were canonized by heretics who obey the innovators in contrast to what the actual fathers are saying.
Great homilies and talks on spiritual books from Father Methodius. Thank you, Norman Ernesto. Very true. Can someone do something about the audio, or is someone sandpapering a coffee table? I think he fixed it. Yeah, you fixed it. I don't hear it anymore. It's a blessing. Metropolitan Jonah is representing ROCOR-MP. Like Sun Tzu said, don't interrupt your enemy when he's making a mistake. Atomic Lead said, initially thought it was lead. Okay, so, we're sticking with lead because that's what we're used to, but now we know it was lead and we were wrong all along because that makes a lot more sense, atomic lead. Then, yeah. If people here are shocked about what Jonah teaches, wait till they hear about what Lazar Puhalo teaches. That'll knock their socks off. Very, very true.
He's still around, or?
Yeah, he's a retired bishop of the OCA, and he still makes statements.
Really?
Yep. Right. For decades, they've been his latest thing was the transgender. He waded into that thing. Right. For decades, they've been asking why. For decades, everyone just shrugs his shoulder and says, I don't know. And he's not. Yeah, that's true. Lazar Paul is canonical, is heretical, and they come, and the OCA took him in like a lost puppy. Yep, biggest mistake our synod ever made. Unfortunately, Lex Justinian, qui tacit, consentit. That's true. Wretched. Unfortunately, a lot of people in the southern part of the Eastern American diocese love Jonah. He's loved all over the country. The problem is his teaching is heretical. Bahalo is a strange, funny word in my people's direct dialect of Russian. It means scarecrow. Didn't know that. World Orthodoxy likes to refer to the few letters between Jonah and Father Seraphim as if that gives him validity and supports Alexei Young's theory that Father Seraphim was fine with World Orthodoxy. It's not true.
Let me see that. Go back to that one again.
Yeah.
World Orthodoxy refers to letters between Jonah and Seraphim. What's funny is Metropolitan Jonah doesn't like Father Seraphim Rose.
Yeah, he didn't listen to him. Father Seraphim gave him advice, told him stay away from St. Vladimir's, and what does he do? He goes to St. Vladimir's. Rose of Lima is an odd one, even for the Catholics. Ellen Lima, okay. I was watching the full Orthodox conference presented by Hierodeacon Hieronymus. That's why I'm late. Okay. Oh, well, very nice. We can't forget that Jonah and many World Orthodox priests were high-level Holy Order of Man's people, more priests than we think. I didn't know that Jonah was Holy Order of Man's. I didn't think that was true.
Even as close as I was, I never heard of that. So
yeah, I never heard that either. It's possible. If these modernist elders don't line up with the consensus of the Church Fathers, they are false. That is correct. Let's not even talk about Lazar Puhalo. Yeah, let's just skip him. Took a few tries, but I got it. The NFTU gang does not like Puhalo. It's not that we don't like him. It's just that he teaches heretical stuff. And so let me see here. I'm old. Our parish was decimated in 2020 and has barely recovered. All the old timers passed away years ago. Now I'm one of 3 old timers left, and I hear more and more confusion. Just, I would say, get in touch with, people in the confessing ROCOR synods, or get in touch with people in the GOC, get in touch with our synod. There's a lot of us here who are trying to hold to the tradition of the church. It's just that the ROCOR is united with the MP has unfortunately gotten to the point possibly of no return, and that's obvious with this video. Justin remembers that it might be helpful doing initial analyses of the following hierarchs: Metropolitan Hilarion Alphaeus, Metropolitan Callistus Ware, and Archbishop Alexander Golitsyn, Archbishop Lazar. Yeah. I mean, it would be, but this is the one. This is the one that popped up on YouTube yesterday. So, regarding elders glorified by the EP, or the day before yesterday, regarding elders glorified by the EP, Patriarch Athenagoras glorified Saint Nectario, Saint Nicodemus the Hagiorite, Saint Cosmos Salatolios, and many others. Are none of them saints? Unfortunately, you misunderstand. We do not recognize the glorifications of the EP. That does not mean we don't recognize Saint Nectarios. The Matthewites glorified him first. That doesn't mean we don't recognize Saint Nicodemus the Hagiorite. It doesn't mean we don't recognize Saint Cosmos. It just means we don't recognize the EP's job in glorifying them. So no, that's not true at all. This is bringing back bad memories of stuff I went through the last couple of decades. I can only imagine. I'm sorry to hear it. Speaking of Althea, the MP is planning on rolling out a catechism made by him as they want to phase out the longer catechism by St. Philaret of Moscow. I think your thing is doing it again, Subdeacon, so I'm just going to quickly mute. And then let me see here. And just to finish up, I think those are all the comments, so we'll go back to the video in just one moment. Okay, I'm going to go back to the video here and see what are the sections left. By the way, this is the full title. I'm going to copy it in case you want to search in YouTube and watch the full thing, because we're in our last few minutes. But that is the title if you want to find it on YouTube. This section is the anathemas, grace and salvation outside the church. I'm going to go right to this one because this one is crazy.
Beatitude regarding the ecumenical councils, it is unfortunately not surprising that he is perfectly comfortable to disagree with them. He actually rejects the notion that ecumenical councils are infallible.
And this is very important. We don't have an external concrete criterion of authority. We don't have an infallible Bible. We don't have an infallible Pope, and we don't have infallible ecumenical councils. Those are all human. We don't have an infallible Bible. We don't have infallible scriptures. We don't have infallible councils. Ultimately, we have statements of truth that we hold, but we don't have any external criterion of truth. And we don't say that it has any, or that it is free of internal contradictions. There are plenty. Or that the scriptures themselves are the criterion of truth. We have nothing of this world or of this creation that is eternal or infallible. We have no external criterion of truth. We don't have an infallible Bible. We don't have an infallible Pope. We don't have an infallible. Ultimately, we don't even have infallible councils. If you look at the ecumenical councils, each one set up the problems for the next. What was the pronouncements of the earlier councils were then edited by later councils. But with the ecumenical councils, each one set up the problems for the next one, because their pronouncements lacked adequacy. They were not adequate to the mystery, as if any human words and concepts can be adequate to the mystery. So
the Holy Fathers then go through this concept. They absolutely refute this concept that the councils and scriptures and fathers are not authoritative. That's horrifying. That is pure modernism. If we're being honest, and I'm just going to go through the last comments, and I think we're going to close up, because the truth of the matter is, if you haven't seen this video, I highly recommend it. I've put the name of it for searching it. It is an hour and 2 minutes long. I'm just going to go through the last few comments. Buhalas to be a nom de plume. I'll research it further. Alfeev gives me James Bond villain vibes. Gentle Breeze, the author of the video, says, I don't agree with you guys fundamentally, but I appreciate you bringing more attention to the video. We do appreciate that you don't mind us doing that. I'm sorry that we're putting it out there, but if you really want to gain visibility, this is one way to do it. I don't believe it'll help, but we appreciate that you try.
Yeah, it's not gonna help. I mean, I wrote other lay people wrote, other clergy wrote on these exact issues. With, like me personally, I wrote Metropolitan with footnotes, with timestamps, with transcripts. So there's no way it could be possibly misinterpreted or missed or anything. And you can't condemn him because across the Atlantic is Moscow, and they're preaching, teaching, and practicing the exact same things. So it's going to go nowhere.
Yeah, I agree. Atomic Lead says, what's he leaving as authoritative vibes? He's leaving nothing, because I don't know that he truly believes in much of anything. Gentle Breeze says, Jonah misses the whole reality of the incarnation when he calls ecumenical councils, scripture, etc. human. They're divine human. That is correct. Well done, Gentle Breeze. Well done. Really great video. Well done. I'm going to cut the video off from here. Subdeacon Nektarios, if you have any closing statements you'd like to make or any recommendations, please let us know.
Yeah, I mean, this is many years in the making. It's not a new thing. If you go to my website, I'll link it here. I don't know if you did or not, but this is the infallibility issue was my straw.
Okay, can you send me a link so I can put that in the chat? Or
it's right there. Yeah, here it's in the... So that was my final straw, is because when he's teaching this, he's teaching this to catechumens and inquirers, that there's no external criterion of truth. And as you can see, that one video, the earliest, spanned from 15 to 18 to 20 to 22. So it's not just things that he's saying spontaneous with like a spontaneous utterance, or he doesn't know what he's saying. In the one video, he's like super adamant about it, and he's like enforcing his authority on it. Like, no, this is true. And there was a letter. I have a bunch of letters from going back and forth, but there's one I'm not going to give ranks or anything, but he's one very influential clergyman in ROCOR told me during confession, and speaking of the synod, I've told them, and I've told them, and I've told them they don't care. That was what I was told by this person in confession up in New York. So,
wow,
that's where we're at with ROCOR-MP, unfortunately. And it's, anybody who knows me, I was diehard for ROCOR. I was like ROCOR, supremacist, right? So, yeah, it's not like there's people in the chat that are like, oh yeah,
I think he says I think there's a kernel of truth to what he says. We have robber councils, so it's not like magical where you fit XYZ criteria, but he obviously takes it way too far. Robber councils are councils that are teaching false teaching. That's their nature. That doesn't mean we don't hold them on the same level as an ecumenical council. They're exactly the opposite. When a council is accepted clearly by the saints, liturgics, and traditions, etc., it's infallible. Yes, that's correct. The subdeacon is very correct. They don't care. But that's this Jonah's kernel of truth taken to unbelievable extremes. Yeah, unfortunately.
Like I just had a priest in ROCOR-MP write me, and he was like, he was asking me, why'd you leave ROCOR-MP? I was like, and I told him the whole story. And he's like, I have something going on somewhere that, I told one of the bishops, my bishop, and he didn't even care. I'm like, I mean, that's
kind of sad. But
it's sad. It's very sad. Like there's that one video, Metropolitan's like, it's sad that we're not in communion. Some people are excited about it, but other, we shouldn't be. It's not. It's a terrible thing. I love Metropolitan Jonah very much, and like I said, he's an outstanding person. He was, he has his flaws like anybody else, but the whole issue is not his character. We don't want him teaching heresy. That's the thing that all these low IQ, low info people that are like, oh, you're schismatics. Why are we schismatic? Why? What's your definition of that? Why? Because we're not submitting to your ecumenism club. So if I'm, like I posed a question to somebody once. So if I join your ecumenism club and I enter myself into the World Council of Churches, I'm perfectly fine then? They're like, Oh, when you say it, it makes it sound stupid like that. You know, so this is why it's heartbreaking. It's like we don't want Metropolitan Jonah to teach this stuff. We want him to be Orthodox, and you know, we want him to have salvation. That's essentially that's what it comes down to. You know, we're not going to cheerlead that he's bringing himself on the road to destruction.
I did see Gentle Breeze is asking a very hard question. No, we have reviewed Estrasio Sargenti, maybe not us, not Subdeacon Nektarios. I don't know if he's read it recently, but you can't take cases where there were abuses in the church that were then disciplined and were then condemned.
Not even the same.
Not even the same. It only becomes Estrasio Sargenti when those fighting from within supposedly win. And I'm telling you, the system is rigged, so that will never happen.
You know what's funny about that? They keep bringing up the time of like Eustratio Sargenti, and they're like, back in the 1700s. Well, you know what? 1755. Refresh my memory for the Patriarch Cyril V and his baptism of Papists. That was the Argenti time. So, I mean, was there examples of pre-ecumenism, ecumenism? Yes, there was.
But it wasn't even meant to be ecumenism because that was the period of the Unia. So, you know, sometimes people just thought that they were back in communion. They didn't understand that the papacy often was a fundamentally different body. Finally, with this one, I'm going to end on this note because we're already at 1 hour and 7. I was trying to keep it to an hour. Everyone, I'm going to put the link to this essay into the description. I want to say thank you to everyone who was here listening or participating. I want to thank our guest, Subdeacon Nektarios. I want to thank our listeners, to those who asked questions and had comments, to those who support our mission, support the channel. We at NFTU need your help. Support us by subscribing or donating on nftu.net, Give, Send, Go, or on Odyssey. Remember all of you in our prayers, and thank you for the support for NFTU. And as always, don't forget to like and subscribe through the prayers of Holy Fathers, for Jesus Christ, our God, have mercy on us and save us. Have a good night, everyone.